How's it going, mates? Asdos here, and we'll be talking about 7 Days to Die, an open world sandbox survival game developed by the Fun Pimps. Yeah, the devs are actually called the Fun Pimps, how awesome is that? Before we start chatting about this title, I want to put out a disclaimer that this game is in early access on Steam, which is kind of a big deal. If you don't know what early access is, I'd suggest googling it for the specifics, but it's basically funding an unfinished product in the hopes that it will one day be finished. There is very little stopping a developer from taking your money and abandoning the game tomorrow, and that has happened before, so please, do your research and be wary of where you throw your hard-earned cash. That being said, the Fun Pimps, that's such a good name, have been very active in responding to community feedback. For example, a recent patch fixed many of my and many other people's gripes with the game in its earlier state, such as suiciding for efficiency and mobs just not spawning anymore. Ultimately, it's up to you if you want to trust them on this. They do seem to be pretty cool on monitoring and improving their game, but I would advise caution nonetheless. With that out of the way, 7 Days to Die, what's it about? The game pitches itself as the survival horde crafting game, and it does exactly what it says in the tin. Your objective is to survive, that is, find shelter, stay hydrated and well fed, and obviously don't get shot, bitten or maimed. It always sounds so easy, doesn't it? The horde part of the title refers to the main enemy, which are AI controlled zombies. Yeah, I know. Another zombie game. Where has creativity gone and all that jazz? But the game, in my opinion, is fairly decent, so we'll put aside the lack of imagination for now. I feel it's worth emphasising the horde part of the title in terms of enemy numbers. While out in the wilderness, zombies tend to be by themselves and kind of spread out. There are many factors that can put them into a hive mind molestation mode, where they will swarm you, beat you and eat you. For example, some zombies function as scouts, and will run off to tell their mates about you if you don't take them out in time. Zombies are also drawn at long ranges to hotspots, and I mean that figuratively and literally. If you do a lot of fighting in a small area, expect to get zerged, but also expect the same results for leaving a campfire burning out in the middle of nowhere. While most of the zombies you'll find are typically slow moving and mindless, lots of them closing in around you can quickly overwhelm you if you don't stay mobile and don't keep checking your immediate area full circle. Sometimes they even manage to sneak up on you when you're busy, which has been the source of many soiled boxes for me because I'm a total pussy to sudden noises. All of this zerg mentality is multiplied considerably at night, but we'll talk more about the time of day later on. The crafting part of the game is as you would expect. You gather raw materials, such as collecting water from a lake using a glass bottle, or chopping down a tree with an axe, and combine them to eventually make stuff you can actually use. The system is fairly in-depth. For example, you can drink water right out of the lake if you want to, but that's generally a bad idea because pollution and zombie piss. Instead, you can opt to boil the dirty water over a campfire to purify it, then drink it. Better yet, if you really want to get the most out of that 1 unit of clean water and you have the resources, you can cook up a special tea by combining it with herbs, which will better hydrate you and also give you other stat perks. Here, your job is to figure out what time and resources you can actually spare in the name of efficiency. But you won't always have the luxury of choice, and sometimes you'll just have to guzzle down whatever shit you can find to stay alive. You start out alone and with next to nothing, so your first priority is to find cotton and craft a sleeping bag to keep your spawn point regular, should you get molested in the early game, and you probably will. Meeting with your friends to group up if you have them is also an important early game task, made easier by a friend system that includes a tracking arrow on your compass. Visually, the game is exactly as you would expect an indie game to look, which is to say that it's very basic indeed. It's also played exclusively in first person as far as I'm aware. There's a surprising amount of cosmetic customization in the clothes and armour you loot considering the genre, but also when you make your character. If you want evidence of that, keep watching to the end of the video for some good old fashioned silliness. It's set in a world where shit has hit the fan and much of it is in ruins, similar to something like Fallout, except there's still plenty of Greenland left if you don't mind the rather hungry locals. While I wouldn't call the game ugly, anyone that demands next gen graphics from their games and is looking to push their top end system to the limits is probably not going to appreciate this title. The same can be said for sound in that it's basic but functional. Zombies groan, grass rustles, and surfaces make different sounds when struck according to material, so you will get metallic sounds from striking metal and so on. I'm not going to bother talking about story because it's a zombie game. The zombies want to kill you, you don't want to be killed. That's the story. That said, it's a sandbox game, so you probably have plenty of stories of your own to tell soon enough. Like the time we made base at a gas station and one of the petrol pumps exploded. Good times. The game is all about the gameplay, and that's just fine by me because it's pretty damn good. Almost everything can be broken down and reused, or at the very least salvaged to put towards other projects. This includes terrain and hills as well, but you can't really dig far downwards as you might expect in a game like Terraria. There's also freeform building with blocks similar to how it works in Minecraft, letting you build more or less whatever the hell you want. And trust me, when nighttime comes a knockin', you're going to want some kind of fort to camp out in. Speaking of nighttime, don't expect just a few extra obstacles when the sky goes dark. You really don't want to travel at night. If for some reason you want to ignore my friendly advice, you'll find that zombies are much more aware of their surroundings, more prone to grouping up on you, and generally just more aggressive. Worse than all of that though is that they no longer walk. Am I talking about crawling? No. I'm talking about sprinting. All zombies except the actual crawlers will be sprinting all the time, and it's very unlikely that you'll be able to outrun them. Camp it out in a fortified position and prepare to make the most of the next daylight, or it's not even going to take 7 days for you to die. This is great because you have a clear schedule for when you should explore and when you should bunker up, but you've always got the option to break the rules if you're desperate. Or horny, or both, they usually go together. Death permanently reduces your wellness by 10 points, which is a very significant amount. Wellness measures your maximum stamina, use for sprinting, swinging, etc., as well as your maximum health. Being hungry or thirsty will also constantly knock down your wellness until you sort that shit out. Once you're eating and drinking regularly, you'll occasionally get an extra point of wellness, which puts in some kind of character progression that isn't tied to your gear. As a side note, when you die, you drop everything that was on your character. You can go back to recover your stuff, but things like explosions will nuke everything out of existence for good. That part is bullshit and has happened plenty of times before. Scavenging is one of the most time efficient things you can do for man-made resources once you find a good spot, and it also happens to be my favourite. The experience is comparable to finding a new area in Fallout 3, where you just go nuts and loot everything. It's a lot of fun and keeps you wanting to find new places with new stashes. There's also nothing stopping you from taking over an empty building and using it as your new base of operations. Just be prepared to fight off the new inhabitants. There's loads of different items to be looted, from food like canned tuna to weapons like the trusty shotgun, so the looting process itself doesn't get stale quickly. However, much of the loot is trash loot that needs to be salvaged in a very clunky and very sluggish UI. Combine this with the absurdly limited bag space and you'll quickly find yourself leaving stuff behind and a little bit annoyed that the game isn't letting you take what was never rightfully yours. On the subject of scavenging, one of my major issues with the game is how much of the game world is open space rather than ruins, camps, etc. Just open deserts or open forests, dotted with zombies and totally free of landmarks. Sure, there will still be decaying bags and natural resources to pillage along the way, but for me, the sense of exploration in these kind of games is finding the next big haul in the next big place. Even a shed or a couple of tents is a great find, not just for the loot, but the sense of atmosphere and recognition that someone just like you used to live here before the whole zombie thing. You can, and should, randomly generate your worlds, and it does a pretty good job of differentiating one map from another, but I've never had a playthrough where the density of landmarks was even close to satisfactory, and I've played enough hours where it really shouldn't be a case of random being random. Walking through a forest is fine, but not for so goddamn long without seeing anything of interest. Let's talk about combat, since it's the only realistic way of shaking off zombies apart from legging it and hoping they get bored of you, which doesn't happen often. Much like the rest of the game, it's nothing new or innovative, but it works. You point, you shoot, zombies die. I enjoy melee, but it's not advisable against multiple enemies if you have the ammunition to spare. Headshots do considerably more damage than anywhere else, and that goes for melee as well. There's no special attack, so don't expect any Dark Souls here. However, you do get double damage on your first shot from stealth if the target hasn't noticed you yet. This also applies to ranged and melee equally. Stealth is primitive in that I honestly have no idea if zombies factor in line of sight and shadow cover. Sometimes I can use that to slip by easily, other times they will turn and run at me anyway. There's a detection system similar to Skyrim, where an eye represents if you've been seen or not. It's good practice to occasionally stealth for just a second to see if you're being hunted. Noise is definitely a factor, so avoid sprinting unless you're willing to put up your dukes. Certain smells will drive nearby zombies insane as well, marked by a nose icon on the UI. Running through a horde with a freshly roasted chunk of pork is not advised but is very entertaining. You can also use this to your advantage to draw attention away from a buddy, or to bring on new friends through a series of traps. Even the most basic and crude ones are actually very effective in this game, reminiscent of the old Dungeon Keeper days. Put a ring of wooden spikes around your base and come out to see the mess it made in the morning. The game can be played by yourself or with others. Alone, you get to enjoy your own pace and you only need to clothe, feed and shelter one person. On the other hand, you've got no one to watch your back, which may put you in a rough spot if your base gets invaded by the Horde. However, more people means that you're going to need to find that many more resources to keep everyone alive, which means a higher emphasis on aggressive exploration. I found both modes to be viable and entertaining. Some servers have PvP rule sets too, for when the Horde just isn't enough to keep you on your toes. As expected of an early access title, the game does have its fair share of bugs, although most of them can be overlooked or fixed with a simple relog. On rare occasions, items will disappear from your inventory or storage for no apparent reason, which really pisses me off. Sometimes zombies will float after they die. Sometimes the edge of a zone won't load graphically and you'll need to relog to see it and enter it safely. Sometimes player characters will be covered in strange textures like rainbows or bushes, though this is often amusing. The variety of zombies is fairly shit. While you have a few different skins, they all do pretty much the same thing, which is slowly lumber towards you and then take swings at you. The exceptions are crawlers that move even slower, zombie dogs that are very fast and absolute cunts, and zombie cops that spew vomit at you from a distance. Be careful with the cops because as far as I know, they're the only ranged zombie in the game. They take quite a lot of shots to kill, and they've also been known to sprint even in broad daylight. Generally speaking, the fatter the zombie, the more shots it will take to kill. There's also giant bees, but that alone doesn't really save the lack of different enemies. Although I found Left 4 Dead 2 to be fairly repetitive as a game, every special infected had a role, an identity and a counter, which made things much more interesting. And I really think a similar setup, at least in regards to enemy variety, would benefit this game a lot. A quick summary of my personal likes and dislikes of this game as it stands at the time of this upload. I like that you can build whatever the hell you want with terrain blocks. Want to make a penis lighthouse with spikes in it? Go for it. I like that you can randomise the world every playthrough, it keeps the game fresh and interesting. I really like how fun the exploration is. There's always the possibility of a new town up ahead just waiting to be robbed blind. I like that there's lots of choices in regards to risk versus reward, things like night versus day and using raw resources versus refined products. I like the surprising amount of cosmetic customization for this type of game, even if the graphics aren't great, in regards to both character creation and the different types of weapons and equipment available. I like that there are loads of items for the crafter and scavenger alike, so if you like building or finding new things, there's plenty for you to do. I also like that the threat of being swarmed or running out of resources is very real. You'll starve if you're too passive, and you'll be eaten if you're too reckless. Every death chips away at your permanent stats. It really keeps you engaged and emphasises the title as a survival game. I don't like that it's an early access game. The pimps of fun do seem cool and legitimate judging by recent patches, but there's just no guarantee the game will ever be finished. I don't like that there's quite a few bugs, even if this is to be expected from an early access title. Most of them are minor and can be looked over, or resolved just by relogging, but floating zombie corpses might ruin immersion for some people, and items that just disappear for no good reason will infuriate everyone. I don't like how the spawning system is absolutely fucked. Sometimes a zombie will spawn right on your head while you're trying to take a crap or something, and it's not like your character is tough to begin with. Come on guys. I absolutely hate how sparse the landmarks are. The wilderness has resources and a few zombies, but walking through so much of that is really dull. It's a shame because finding even something as small as a lone tent is really fun from the viewpoint of an explorer and a scavenger, but it just doesn't happen often enough. I don't like the lack of variety in the Horde. All the zombies are exactly the same in function, except the crawler is slow, the dogs are fast, and the cops can throw up on you. Oh, and fatties take more bullets to kill. I also don't like the inventory and crafting UI. There's hardly any backspace, there's an unnecessary amount of clicking and scrolling to produce just one goddamn item, and there's just so much trash loot, the game is pretty much going to have a salvage all trash button to make it work peacefully. At a glance, I'd compare the open world survival theme to something like DayZ. The scavenging aspects remind me very much of Fallout 3, and the block building system is similar to Minecraft. Overall, while the game lacks polish or flair, what it does have works very well, and I see a lot of potential for expansion in the future. Most of the criticisms I have of the game are quality of life issues rather than core flaws, which means there is a much higher chance of them being resolved. If this is your genre, or a genre you've been curious to look into, I'd say this game is definitely worth your time whether you want to roll solo or team up with others. Or kill them. Just remember the friendly warning I gave you about early access games, okay? That's all from me mates, I hope you found this video useful. Don't forget the bonus clip that I mentioned before coming right after this outro. This has been Asdos, and as always, I bid you a good night. Oh wow, looking good. Look at that. Oh, you stud. Oh my god, what the fuck is that? Maybe I can blend in with the zombies this way. What is that shit? Oh man. Oh man. There is only one name for this monstrosity. Fat Ken! Fat Ken!